How are you? Happy pre-Friday. Welcome back to Raquel Las Vegas. It's me, Raquel Lee. So I totally filmed a whole video and didn't realize that I was covering the sound button, so there was no sound. So we get to do it over again. Yay! No one cares? Okay, moving on. Anyway, so today we're talking about identity in the relationship, like if you're getting lost in that, or if you don't know what that means. Hopefully I'll be able to explain it through the course of this video. So, what's kind of been discussed with me lately, and it's been several different people, completely different, nobody knows that this many people have the same thing in common, but it's boiling down to people losing themselves in relationships, like not really having their own identity. So let's talk about it. Let's just jump right in. There's one, I feel like, major thing that can contribute to this, but I'm going to try and talk about all aspects of it and not just this particular thing. But the thing I'm talking about is sex can be a very big thing in a good way and in a bad way as far as a relationship. The way to identify whether it's good or bad for you is to take a second to say, well, can I hang out with this person that I'm having this amount of sex with and have a conversation, or, do something other than that and not be thinking about it, or not be worried about it, or not be concerned with it. And what I've found is a lot of people have not got that part together. A lot of people don't know how to have a relationship without there being a certain amount of sex in it. And I feel like it's not strange. It's just, I feel like that defeats the purpose of being in a relationship. You're not in a relationship to just have sex. If that was the case, it's so much easier than committing to another person. I feel like people misconstrue what it is to be really in a relationship because their whole persona is developed around what sometimes the other person, sometimes himself, it just depends on what side of the coin you're on, but who's in control of the sex. Which, this may sound weird, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper and hopefully it'll make sense. The person that, the two people that had brought this up to me were talking about how, and I talked about it in an earlier video, I did, I believe it was earlier this week, where somebody was made to feel bad for not having enough sex or sexting their partner during work hours, right? You remember? If you watched it, cool. If not, go back, look at it. I couldn't tell you which video it is. I'll have to figure it out myself. If I remember to do that before I post this, I'll link it down below. Moving on. So in that particular scenario, I was like, well, do you guys hang out? Do you do anything? And that particular couple has been in a relationship for, I want to say 6 or 7 months. It's not super long, but it's under a year. And I'm like, do you do anything other than have sex all the time? And they're like, well, we try to watch a movie, but it always turns into that, the whole Netflix and chill thing. I'm like, okay, but what's the issue? Why aren't you talking? You know what I mean? It's not even necessarily that. It's some people just like to have a lot of sex. There's nothing wrong with that either. But if you are the person who would prefer to have a conversation and things like that, maybe you should start trying to figure out with your partner as to why everything has to be centered around that act before you guys can have any other type of interaction. Now, in that particular situation, it's something that they're trying to work on, but their communication is completely off. And y'all know me, I'm a big advocate about communication. Communication is seriously the biggest key, if not the number one key to a successful relationship, is communication. And if y'all don't know that by now, God help you, because I mean, it's so obvious that it doesn't even make sense to keep repeating it as often as I do, but I feel like I have to. But anyway, so in their particular situation, their communication is just really, really off, but they're trying to work on it. And it seems that there is a deeper reason in this particular case as to why everything is about the sex and then the relationship itself becomes secondary. Now, the other problem I have with this is because, like I was initially talking about, your identity becoming developed around solely that other person. And this can happen in so many different ways, but I'm only going to list like a few off the top of my head, which would be you don't know anything about yourself that does not include the other person. That's a very Reader's Digest version of what I'm talking about. If you can't explain one thing about you or something that you are interested in or something that you like that does not include, involve, or stem from that other person, your identity is wrapped up in them. Like you don't have any genuine interests of your own. That's a big problem. That goes back to self-care and self-awareness. And you have to be secure, comfortable, and understanding enough of yourself to be in a good relationship to begin with. But if this is something that is going to, or that is going on in your relationships, this is something that you need to address. You don't want to be in a relationship and not be able, like if somebody asks you, what's your favorite movie? If it's the same one as your significant other, coincidentally, cool. But if it only became that way because you enjoy the situation around, I don't know, I'm trying to think of a movie, like The Matrix, not to get all super, like, philosophical for a second, ignore the fact that I chose that movie. We're just using it as an example, okay? But yeah, if your favorite movie is The Matrix, but your favorite movie is The Matrix because of, XYZ that happened with that person while you were watching it, okay, that's great. What do you like outside of that person? And then you can't answer the question. That's a problem. Better example, let's see. What about if it's your favorite food? Oh, well, I only like what they eat. Or I only know how to go out and do something if they're involved. Like, if all of your involvement in all of your stories and everything that is supposed to make you into you is not the same without that other person, that's something you should probably be looking into, because that's most likely, in my head, a red flag that, oh, okay, so without this person, you just don't exist? Is that what you're telling me? Like, you just have no interests outside of this person? Okay, you should probably work on that, because that sounds kind of creepy. I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's not stalkerish, because obviously you're supposed to be in a relationship, but that's a little creepy. Like, I'm just saying. I'm not saying that it's wrong to have same or similar interests as your partner, but if you have absolutely nothing outside of your partner, that's when it becomes a problem. Talking about myself for a moment, I've been there where I didn't know how to function without, at the time, the person that I was with. And that's also the relationship. I believe I labeled that video as Purge to 2020. So check out the video if you want to know what I'm talking about. And please ignore that super loud helicopter. Sorry, I'm next to UMC Hospital, so that's what that noise is. Sorry. But anyway, yeah, like if I hadn't gotten out of that relationship, I wouldn't have realized that I was so identity based in that other person. And it took me being out of that to be like, oh, I actually don't like any of the stuff that I was doing. So that's new. Like, you don't want to wait till the last minute to learn yourself. You know what I mean? And that's like what I was talking about, self-care and self-awareness. You got to take care of you. You got to know you. You got to be in tune with yourself to recognize your contribution to situations like that. And if you are experiencing a situation where, like I said, the main topic is, losing yourself in the sex aspect of your relationship, you might want to start asking, why is it that particular act that is kind of controlling the dynamic of the relationship, because that's not a good thing. I'm not saying it's, the worst thing. It's certainly not. But if that's something that is a big deal for you or a big issue, you should probably start trying to figure out why. It could be you, it could be your partner, but either way, that's something you two should communicate to each other and try to get to the bottom of. I mean, all of everything that I'm talking about always comes back to communication and self-care and self-awareness and all those different things, but communication being the biggest, as I said at the beginning of this. I mean, if you really seriously don't know that by now, you're going to have a really hard time, because that's, a closed mouth doesn't get fed. I mean, if there's something that you dislike and you don't vocalize it, well, that's not anybody's problem but your own, because nobody knows it's a problem unless you say something. So take those things into account when you're looking at your relationship. If you are having identity crisis within your relationship. Now, if you're not, obviously this doesn't apply to you, okay? Don't get all weird and make it be all, oh, well, you're only talking about one type of person. Like, no, I'm talking about to who this applies to, okay? Be real. Come on now. But I'm just saying, that's something you want to be aware of and try to fix. There's nothing wrong with having multiple partners and all that kind of thing. But if you're going to make the choice to be in a relationship, understand that that means more than just the physical part of being in that relationship. Mind, body, soul goes into being in a relationship. You have to be able to interact. You have to be able to talk. You have to be around each other. You have to be all those different aspects outside of just the physical part of the relationship. A lot of people don't do that. A lot of people are in relationships and they can't stand to be alone with their significant other. Okay, then you probably shouldn't be in a relationship. Like, that defeats the purpose of being in the relationship. If you're going to be that way, then you might as well just save yourself the trouble and just not be in one at all. I mean, it sounds harsh, but I'm being so serious. Like, especially if sex is something that you guys are basing your relationships off of, it's so much easier to just go out and have sex with just about anybody, especially out here in Vegas. I'm not saying go out there and just screw everything that walks, but it's so much easier than putting the pressure on yourself of having a relationship if you're not going to stick to some sort of continuity in making sure that relationship flourishes into whatever you're trying to make it flourish into. I feel like the relationship aspect and everything that goes into that, not saying that there's like a specific set of rules, but if you're going to partake in monogamy, then you need to do everything that goes along with being monogamous. And that's more than just having sex on a regular basis. So, that being said, if this applies to you, first of all, I'm so sorry. Second of all, I really hope that you take the time to get to the bottom of why your identity is so bent on just being everything for that person and nothing for yourself. You should be just as important as all the things that you're trying to live up to or create with that other person. It's not always all about them. It's not. And if you don't know that, then maybe you should take time for yourself to figure that out. Until next time, inspire daily, empower daily. Repeat that process once a day, every day, and I will see you tomorrow.